Hey all, how's everyone doing today? We find ourselves on a Monday in the shop and we are jointing and planing stiles and rails for panel fronts. The cabinet doors are done. And I thought this would be a great opportunity since I'm set up. I'm gonna try and keep it short because there's a million videos on this and this is my perspective. Simply that. It's what I think is efficient. Boy, you're still dirty. And what I've just become used to over the years. I want to address some videos that you'll see in the woodworking circles where, it'll be, oh, you don't need a jointer in your shop. You don't need a jointer. So that's what this is about. This is not necessarily trying to convince you to get a jointer, but maybe consider it when you see what you can do with a jointer. It's not just for edges. My suggestion would be to buy the biggest jointer you can because back in the, it would have been the flood of '93, I got a good deal on a small Delta jointer. It was a cast, it was heavier than heck, but it was only 6 inches and it had a belt driven motor and it wasn't very powerful at all. And it did an okay job. You do have to get a nice gauge and dial your cutters in. Some have 2, some have 3. My 8-inch has 4 cutters and they come helical. And the other cutters, I can't remember what they're called, but they're little squares. And it's, I guess, not helix. I can't remember. Anyway, excuse me. So anyway, what these videos show is people rigging up sleds to run through their planer and this and that and the other thing. And that's fine. I mean, if you have a curvy board, let's just start at the beginning. Got dust in my eyes. If you have a curvy board across the flat that's, wavy, I guess is the best way to say it. If you put that through your planer, the planer is just gonna follow that wave. So what it'll do is transfer that wave onto the other side of the board. And obviously you don't want that, especially if you're starting to glue edges and whatnot. You want to get it as flat as you can. So hence people invent these sleds that they can shim and hey, that works. If you don't have a lot of boards to do, and I don't have a million boards to do today, but I do have the luxury of my setup. And I just want to show you what might be worth working towards. I do recommend, if you can't afford a jointer at this point, save up for one and buy the biggest, baddest jointer that you can afford. But in the meantime, using those sleds would be a good idea because if you don't, when you go to your edge glue ups, you're just gonna be fighting the waves and you'll never have them completely even. The only way to get around that is to select material at your dealer, your wood dealer, that is gonna give you a better result, but not, especially if you're dealing with S3S lumber, you don't get a whole lot. I believe they run it through their big sander, planer, and then sander, and they straight line rip you a side, which isn't always straight line ripped, and you're stuck with something that you have to finish. You have to complete the dressing, what I call dressing the lumber. You have to finish that. And so having a jointer to get you to a standardized square and flat is really key, because if you have a crown, which is a hook along the edge of your board, it's going to cause you problems at the table saw. And there, you can do that with a hand plane. You can straighten it with a hand plane. But if you're in a production situation and time is money, it's nice to have the luxury of a jointer, a table saw, and a planer all working together. So let me set you up and I'll give you an idea of what I do. and it ends up just being a giant circle. You start at one machine with a board, you flatten it first, then you take the flat edge and you put that up against your joiner fence and you run an edge, so that gives you a flat and a square edge. So in other words, that edge is square to the flat that you just ran. Then you take it to the planer and you run it with the flattened edge down through the planer, and that transfers. And when it comes out of the planer, you get two parallel flat sides. And the last order of operations is taking it over to the table saw and putting your jointed edge up against the fence and ripping that. Now, if you have a blade that's not so hot and leaves saw marks, you'll have to kind of allow for either taking it back to the joiner and cleaning the saw marks up, or if they're not so bad, you can sand them out or use a hand plane. So you just kind of have to play with that. But this is the general setup that I use. Flatten, joint, planer, rip. And then examine your edges and then go from there. It all connects though, because when you're running something through a router table, you need a square, straight edge. It's going to give you the best results with your router bits and putting profiles on wood and all that kind of stuff. Ripping lumber, if you've got a 6-inch board and you need a 2-inch board, it's just going to make it easier. But what I like to do is get all of the wood together for the project and just look at what I've got going on. Now, if I've got 3/4 inch stock, I do all the 3/4 inch stock and then keep that in a pile. And then if I've got drawers and I'm going to go down to like 5/8 or 1/2 inch, then I'll mill up the stock and then some extra in case there's some boo-boos going along. Now, the other thing you need to be aware of is that hardwood, at least my hardwood dealership they are, when they sell S3S, it is basically, let's see, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but it is a 32nd lower than 13/16. It used to be 1/16 over 3/4, which is 13/16. And you can do the math and figure out what that 32nd is that's over 3/4. That doesn't give you a lot to deal with. So that means your wood selection is going to have to be very, very careful, because if you have a big cup in a board or a big something that you're trying to get to 3/4 and you're only a 32nd over 3/4, that doesn't give you a lot of room. So I've gotten to the point to where I have to specify. I go 7/8. I have to, and it costs me more, but that gives me more room to flatten boards and plane them and end up at 3/4. Because if you're a 32nd over 3/4, by the time you've run it through the joiner once and run it through the planer, you're at 3/4, and this is just taking minimal off just to flatten. So anyway, fortunately at this point in time, we're going to be running it to 1/2 inch. We're going to be taking some of this 3/4 and making 1/2 inch. And right now, I'm not going to go through the rigmarole of resawing it. We're just going to have to plane it down and deal with the wood chips. Anyway, so that is, I think, an overview of this. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, let's get you guys set up, and we'll do the round robin and go from there. Now, if I hadn't been fussing around with my planer, because this is a relatively new planer that I have, and my old planer went the opposite way. So this would have been even faster. And, but you see, creating these stations, what we have now is a piece of S4S lumber that I know is flat. I mean, and you can buy S4S lumber, but S4S lumber is still subject to the temperature and humidity changes at the store. But so that's kind of it. So like I said, oh, it's hard to talk with those in my ears. So like I said, if you have to make a sled, by all means, that's a great thing. But maybe just give a joiner a shot, you know, or at least entertain the idea, because it's well worth it. The thing that I don't like about the sled is that it commits your planer to being a joiner as well. And if you have a lot of stock to rip, you really don't have time to adjust your sled for every single individual board. But that's just me. Anyway, I hope everybody got something out of this. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. Like and subscribe. Please help us with the algorithm. We are trying hard to get to 500. It would be nice. But anyway, everyone have a great day, and I'll catch you on the next one.